We're here with Detroit techno master Derrick May before his much anticipated audio farm gig on 9th of April. What's it like to be back in the UK?
I thought I was in Liverpool. Ha! Just joking. It's always a pleasure. You know, I mean, this is like second home for me. And many years ago, when I first started my career, it was all about Birmingham. It was a real experience for me as far as my sort of early growth of Europe. So it's cool, man. Always cool to be back.
Yeah, you're looking forward to playing back in Manchester. 2 years it's been since you played there.
I always like coming back. You know, it's always fun. Like I said, once again, being north, especially north, not just England, but north, is a second home to me.
Okay,
you know,
cool.
the old saying is "grim up north." You know, it is in a good way.
Well, as you know, Derrick was one of the founders of techno music with Kevin Saunderson, Juan Atkins as well. Where did your inspirations actually come from?
Well, overall, I think they came from being born and raised in Detroit. I mean, I can get all into the history of what maybe some people know as far as the Kraftwerk thing, the George Clinton thing. I'd like to say that that's well known, but there's always a new generation of kids coming up who don't know anything about that. So it's always good to mention it. It's always good to mention that, you know, my influences as a young kid coming up was funkadelic, yes, and it was Kraftwerk, and it was even a lot of Jimi Hendrix. You know, it was David Bowie was important. A lot, but overall music that was alternative at the time. In Detroit, we really had it was an experimental market for radio stations back before digital radio came along, back before corporate totally took over radio. There was a time when radio was not a corporate entity. In other words, it was families that owned radio stations, and every single radio station was owned by or a small company that owned it. WJLB, WGPR, WLBS. These were important radio stations in our city, and they were like, in particular, they were sort of used us as guinea pigs for different styles of music. Everyone played different music. Nobody played the same 20 records like now. It wasn't a rotation as it is today. It was rotations that existed, but they were maybe like 50 record rotations. And they had different DJs that had their own personalities, and they played their own music as well. And within their radio show, they had to play some of those program songs, but they were able to play what they wanted to play, which gave them their own identity, which meant that you could lock into that show, and you could listen to them, and you could hear stuff that you never heard before. And they took pride in playing music that no one ever heard before. So this was a different era, a different time, when individuality was still really important in radio, which doesn't exist these days, other than the mix shows or some of the really obscure shows that come on late at night. And that was really important to the development of our outlet, because we didn't have any other outlet for music. That was it. We didn't have internet. We didn't have any kind of. We had a few record stores, but that was virtually it for our outlet for any kind of alternative music.
Okay, cool. What about the internet? How do you think that's actually helped the progression of like techno music, or you like to call it now high-tech soul?
Yeah, I say high-tech soul, but it still is techno music originally, of course. I mean, I definitely don't want to turn my back ever on what we tried to start. But I think I don't know if it's helped so much right now, because the real true sort of impact of what we did or what was going on was record stores. You know, you could feel a direct impact of what was happening from when you went into a record store, or when you met people that worked in record stores, or when you saw kids sitting around record stores listening to music, and you could really see the impact of what was happening. Kids could talk, people could talk, not just kids, but people could talk to each other, and they could find out what was the next big hot record, and they could search. And I remember buying records just because the album cover was cool.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what the music sounded like.
Yeah.
I just liked the album. I found Tommy like that as a kid, The Who, the album. I just liked the album cover. I didn't even know who the hell it was, you know. And then I turned myself onto some music that way. So I think, you know, the internet is very cool for music, but I think it makes it too accessible in a sense where people don't have to, they don't have to ever like reach into their imaginations or into their sort of idea of research or seek seek out and sort of discover. It's just right there at their fingertips, and it's a very different thing than going and discovering the music and finding it on your own.
What about the whole like evolution of like doing like live sets with the likes of laptops, and you know, what have you got like views on that with the things of CDJs and not using vinyl?
Get the microphone on that one, because that's some serious fucking shit. All right, now, first of all, as far as vinyl is concerned, vinyl was inevitably going to be gone one day. It is a fact of reality that that the future is the future. The wheel of progress comes. If you stand in the way of the wheel of progress, you simply get rolled over. Let's not ever forget that. But I think that the unfortunate part of it is that the wheel of progress with vinyl records in particular came progressively extremely fast, possibly too fast for any level of adjustment. I think you could look at many different reasons as to why it happened so fast. I think one of the reasons is that record companies lost control of this industry when they turned their backs on downloads. When they simply thought that the download industry was a joke, they opened the door up for a lot of rebellion, for a lot of support for a market, for an entity that they had no idea what it was. They simply laughed it off, and I think that was the beginning of the end of the music industry as we know it. It's very sad, man, that record stores don't exist as they once did, because there's a real level of education that comes from talking to the guy who works in a record store, who's a living human encyclopedia. You know, he's a guy or girl who can tell you that particular bass line of that particular record was done 15 years ago from this particular record, and you should check that out too. You know, he's the guy who says on that particular record, so-and-so worked with so-and-so, and that was the only time those two ever got together. You know, you should check that out, because it's very interesting, because you just bought this shit right here, and that right there is a total replica of what this was 25 years ago. And that's really unfortunate that is gone. And you're not going to ever get that, not having somebody who can be your sort of guide to history through music. And that's the one part of the music. Shut the fuck up! That's the one part of the music industry that I really think is very sad that it doesn't exist anymore. As for the internet, once again, I think the internet is a cool thing. I love it. I'm a total fan of forward progress, but I just think it's really sad that DJs have lost their way, as far as I'm concerned, with not with vinyl, but with even my friends Carl Craig and Kevin Saunderson. They are totally locked into using laptops. Francois, you know, he's a good friend of mine as well. I personally cannot put my I have to wear these. These are not fashion. These motherfuckers are real. So I find myself I can't imagine the way I play with my frantic style and the way I move and how I sweat and how I build up all this energy. I'm knocking off a kilo or two when I play. It keeps me from being super fat. Not fat, but super fat. I can't imagine the way I playing with my glasses on. I can't imagine, even contact lenses for that matter. I can't imagine looking at a laptop and trying to distinguish what I'm going to play at that particular moment by looking at a laptop. I just can't do it. Maybe I will have to do it one day. Playing with CDs and I still can get my hands on vinyl is no problem. But playing with a laptop is whack. I mean, it looks like you're checking your fucking email. I hate to say it, it does. It really does. Listen, like I said, my bros play with it. I've got super respect for them. I love them. But I'm also one of the best motherfuckers in the world at what I do, and I will continue to be as long as I do it. So I can say this, and nobody can tell me anything about what I can or can't say. They can kiss, lick, or suck my ass. But playing with a laptop is whack.